successfully on both conventional and digital presses, both a digital press and large format. So more and more printers are printing on all types of devices, and it's a challenge because devices don't necessarily print the same way every time, and the files that we get from our customers are not necessarily built for a specific type of press. So we as service providers need to do something to accommodate the fact that a digital press and a large format output device and an offset press print very different from one another. So we'll talk about the challenges and the solutions, and we're actually going to give you some files that you can do self-audits with and just see how well you're doing it at managing your color between multiple devices. In addition to the device color being different, whether it's a digital press or an offset press, you have other issues related to the precision or the consistency of each device to itself. So we'll talk about what causes this and how we can fix it. And I'll also provide some sample files for you to see how well your devices print and how consistently they print. So whether we're talking digital or conventional, we have multiple causes for poor printing and slow make-ready. And these issues are often not readily apparent to even pre-press people that process files for a given printer. I've talked to pre-press people who have been in the industry for 30 years, and when I bring up some of these issues that I'm going to bring up, they've said, you know, I never thought about it like that before, but now that you've said that, yeah, that does happen more regularly than I even know. And one of the three big issues I'm going to focus on today is the fact that customers supply files oftentimes in the wrong color space, meaning in the perfect world, if you were printing on an HP 10,000 Indigo press, the customer should build their file in an HP Indigo press color space for the given substrate that they want their job printed on. Now, in reality, that's never going to happen. So that's why we have things like reference printing spaces like Grackle, that ideally, if the HP Indigo press is hitting Grackle and the customer builds their file in Grackle, now we have a connection. We have a closed loop between the two. Unfortunately, that rarely happens even today. So our customers supply files in the wrong color space, oftentimes PDFs with mixed elements, which we'll talk about, and that can cause havoc on the output device. Second big issue is customers supplying files in volatile color builds, whether it's a spot color build, whether it's a process color image, and not having the builds, shall we say, optimized. These types of issues can cause a lot of problems on press, even if the press is printing perfectly. And we'll talk about these types of issues as well and how we can fix those. Third big issue I'll talk about today is that the output device is not really printing in the color space you're wanting it to print in. So for instance, take an offset press. Your company may have gone through the G7 methodology to set your offset press into a Grackle condition. But how long ago was that? Was it a month ago? Was it a year ago? How confident are you that that device is still printing in this Grackle color space that was signed off on at some time in the past? Oftentimes, devices change, and without realizing it, the device could be a day after you did your G7 curves. It could be a month after. The train gets off the tracks, and the output device is no longer printing the way you think it's printing. And frankly, the tools that we've given our operators to know that the train has come off the track, meaning the output device is no longer printing the way we're expecting, has been fairly poor from an industry standpoint. But we'll talk about how that's changing and how we can fix that. So to get right into it, as I mentioned, you might be experiencing these issues, but you don't even know. So I'll go through the issues in a little more detail, show examples, and then provide you with digital files that you can process through your workflow. You don't even have to print some of these files. You can email them back to us, and we can assess to tell you how well your workflow did at managing these different types of elements, things that I tend to call stupid customer tricks, meaning the customer is building elements within a file that have no business printing, but in defense of them, they don't know any better. So it's up to us as experts and print service providers to be able to handle that file and fix it before it ever gets to press so it doesn't cause us with problems. We'll also provide you files that you can print and we can assess to ensure that your output device is really printing the way you think. Now, those of you that have heard me talk before, at least in the last couple of years, this is one of my favorite quotes, is that if you think of all the industries that are in North America today, can you tell me one other industry where operators create between 2,000 and 200,000 products an hour and they're not held directly accountable for the resultant product? Well, welcome to printing, really. Although some people might say that they hold their operators accountable, this is where the finger pointing starts coming up. And someone says, well, the plate curves were no good, or you don't know how to run your press effectively, or it just goes back and forth. And so we've kind of gotten ourselves into this state in the industry. And the good news is we can get ourselves out of this condition and really treat printing as a manufacturing business, which it truly is and needs to be treated as such. In fact, it's one of the reasons why the print industry is one of the 5 least automated industries in the United States. It's because it hasn't been treated as a manufacturing business. Now, let's start out by talking about files. Files that you get from a customer. Typical scenario, ABC Creative builds a document for their customer. Betty made pages 1 through 5, Paul made 6 through 12, and Sue made 13 through 18. Now, it's all put into one PDF, but each person's color settings when they were working on their images and on their vector elements were set differently. They're all in CMYK, but they're all in different CMYK color spaces. And the problem with this is most workflows today, when you receive this PDF file with multiple images, even in CMYK color spaces, even though they're different CMYK color spaces, most workflows today do not pick up on the fact that the elements have different CMYK color spaces, which means if Betty used a Caucasian model on page 1 and it gangs up with page 12 that Paul used, and he used a different Caucasian model, one of those models, when printed on press, will look like they have a liver problem because they're so yellow. The other model might look perfect because they chose a more relevant color space. But on press, the digital press operator or the conventional press operator is not going to be able to fix the flesh tone that's yellow and make it pink because it's in the file. You can't necessarily move the ink keys around or change the tone curves in a digital press to make those two flesh tones match, especially on the same page. Nor do you want, in either case, the press operator trying to chase that color fix. So this is one of those issues that I see every day printers struggle with. They have multiple images on the same form and they're not consistent. And this is all due to the workflow not distinguishing elements in the wrong CMYK color space. And those of you might be out there saying, well, boy, I have Kodak Printergy, it does it. No, actually, it doesn't do it. You say Heidelberg Connect. or Pronect. No, it doesn't do it. ESCO, it doesn't do it. Fuji XMF, no, it typically doesn't do it with the settings that are available in that workflow system. So these are things that have to be called out, and that's why we have these files that I'll show you in a minute, like this one, which is really interesting because it's free. You can send it through your workflow, and you can look at it on your proofer and see if the top row of images matches the bottom row of images. This is a PDF file, and the 6 images on this file are all in CMYK color spaces. Problem is, the top row is in Grackle CMYK, the bottom row is in Gravure CMYK. When you open this in Acrobat, the top row will look identical to the bottom row because Acrobat understands the embedded profile that's associated with the bottom images, and it on the fly renders it into the correct color space for the display. So in Acrobat, these 2 rows will look identical, but when you print it through your output device, they will come out very different. And this is how files sneak through your workflow, in that they are in CMYK, but they're not in the right CMYK. It's a very, it's kind of a scary file in some ways because you see how they match in Acrobat, but when you print, they don't match. It's like, uh-oh, what's going on here? And I've got it all written up in terms of what to look at and how to assess it. This is a key form. Some very intelligent people in Europe built this form to test PDF integrity, color integrity of workflows. It has, what about 16 color elements on it. And this not only has different CMYK images, but it also has different RGB images, gray images. It's got too much total area coverage, some transparencies, things that I call stupid customer tricks, like customer putting registration black into an image. For those of you that are involved in packaging, those cornflakes in the bottom right corner were built with no cyan in them. And when it's run through the color management system going to your Indigo, you don't want to have, you don't want to see any cyan in those cornflakes, or especially Kellogg's will not want to see any cyan in those cornflakes, or you'll lose the ability to do any print for them because they are very specific about no cyan being in those cornflakes. So this type of file will help you interrogate how well your workflow does at handling many of these images. Now there's a new form recently out that will test hi-fi workflows, or what we call extended color gamut workflows. In fact, I'm working with a number of companies right now that have been printing with 7-color process, so cyan, magenta, yellow, black, plus a orange, green, and blue. But now they're transitioning to a violet instead of the blue. And they don't want to have to go in manually and re-separate all of their files. They want the ability to just run it through a software program and have it reconvert the files, maintaining the original appearance of how it looked when they were using blue ink, but make it look now the same using the violet ink. And that's what this type of solution does, is it maintains that appearance, including things like spot color overprints and hi-fi color printing. So this is a really nice test file to see how well your workflow handles extended gamut color. These 3 files we're making available to you, and as I said, you don't have to print. You can just run it through your workflow and send us back the digital file, and I'll put together a spreadsheet like is showing up on the screen right now on what elements in your workflow passed and what elements failed. And you'll see here I'm showing actual codec color flow audit I did 3 weeks ago. Heidelberg meta dimensions workflow I did about 4 weeks ago, and an ESCO workflow that I did a week ago. These are actual workflows from customers and it goes through each of the 15 elements in the key form, and it shows you how they did. So number one is it's important to see that all of them failed the CMYK test. Where it says PSR, those are images within that key form that are in CMYK color space other than Grackle. They're actually in Gravure. And none of those workflows picked up on that and color managed it successfully. And when you look at the overall number down on the bottom right, you can see ColorFlow had a 33% success ratio, and Meta Dimensions and ESCO had a 30% success ratio. So some of them handled some of these elements better than others. But all of them failed more than 67% of the objects, which is very typical. I see it every day. And these are objects that make it through to press and cause havoc, whether it's a digital press or a conventional press. Going on, talking about how images look, this is an actual test that I did with Gannett USA Today. And what they had done is they had a number of images on a test page, and they were looking at 6 different color serving programs, and all of them had the image look like the one on the right. And they thought, oh, well, that one must be right, because that's how all 6 of them imaged. But when you actually open the file in Photoshop, it looks exactly like the image on the left, which is what Alwan provided. And this is where I had to educate Gannett on the fact that the file was coming into Gannett in swap color space. And the 6 other programs were essentially ignoring that it came in swap color space and just output it in snap newsprint color space. And by doing that, the colors shift a little bit and the shadows go away. As you can see, the detail in his hair just evaporated. Alwan interrogates that PDF, knows the file was originally built in swap color space, and color converts it to snap. So snap printing on newsprint looks like or shares the appearance of swap, so the customer sees what they're expecting. And this second image is the same type of thing. The image on the right is the Alwan example. The image on the left was how all the other ones did it. And I've got newspaper chains like Toronto Star and Lee Newspaper using Alwan, and they can't give it up because it honors the appearance of what the advertiser wanted the file to look like, but it prints on newsprint and maintains that appearance. And that's what Alwan does for newsprint, for digital press, for large format, for conventional. It doesn't matter. It works with any technology. It's process agnostic. And in this way, it honors the way the customer wanted the file to look, because it can go into the PDF, and even if there's 10 different images on the same page in 10 different color spaces, mixed, it could be a couple of RGB images and different RGB color spaces, a couple CMYK and different CMYK, a couple hi-fi colors. Alwan will go in there and manage that file accordingly. And a lot of people think, oh, they all do that. No, they don't. And that's why we've built these test files, so you can test your workflow and see how well your workflow handles these types of things. Transparencies, another huge issue, especially with digital and large format. 70% of the workflows of our printers in North America today still don't have the Adobe Print Engine somewhere in their workflow, which is pretty amazing, especially when we're talking large format and digital. And what this means is that transparencies might not be rendered correctly. And when this happens and it prints out incorrectly, that's a straight loss to the bottom line. You do not make that up by selling more print. We need to prevent these files from printing before they cost you money. And these days, more and more transparencies are being used by people building these pages, and they can really cause havoc. So we actually have, in addition to the key form, which has some transparency elements, we have some test files with overprint sensitive and complex transparencies that can test your workflow and see how well your workflow handles these types of transparencies that can cause havoc on the output device. Now, with these files, we have instructions on how to print them or run them through your workflow and what to look for in case of a failure or in case of a pass, so you know that you're safe and your workflow is robust. So with these files, it's very easy to audit, do a self-audit on your workflow, and you won't be losing money on prints that are wrong anymore. Now, I want to highlight the color conversion that's taking place within ColorHub. Alwan is actually using the Adobe CMM. So the Adobe CMM is what you see happen in Photoshop when you do a color conversion within Photoshop. Other workflows use different CMMs, often their own proprietary CMM, and just by changing the CMM, you can change how color from one profile to another profile, what color results. The color results can be different. Alwan has hooked their horse up to Adobe for many technologies. The Adobe PDF Engine, Alwan is an Adobe PDF beta site for the PDF Engine, PDF library. They also have the Adobe CMM, and in this way, it's a really good partnership. In fact, with the ColorHub product, which fixes everything we've talked about so far, they also have unsharp masking, which is very a la Photoshop, to sharpen files at that last possible moment before you actually image them, which is really the best place to apply sharpening. Now let's move on and talk about volatile color builds, meaning builds that are not very intelligent going out to an output device. This, what you're seeing on the screen right now, is a comparison between two IT8s on the same page of a Hewlett-Packard 10,000 Indigo press. And I rotated the two IT8s to be 90 degrees from one another, and then I measured them in, and I compared the difference. And where you see the red box there is the black channel for the differences. The first three columns in green are the cyan, magenta, yellow builds, and you can see there's no black in those builds from an IT8. And over on the right, where it's red and yellow, this is showing you where the color difference is on the same page. So if you take a build made up of 60 cyan, 50 magenta, 50 yellow, and put it two different places on this HP 10,000 press, and I'm not picking on HP here, whether it's a Xerox or any other type of digital press out there, you're going to see similar, if not worse, results. But the delta E difference in delta E 2000 is over 4 units, which is very noticeable to the eye. And it's just showing the lack of precision of a toner type device. In fact, I've seen offset presses do the same thing here, but when you have a build made up of very little black, it's very volatile. It can never print the same way twice. Now, what we did with the IT8 was we ran it through ColorHub, reprinted it, and the numbers when I reprinted came out to be less than a 2 delta E of peak. So it took the volatility of the builds and decreased it by 50%. And this makes that HP device twice as precise, twice as consistent. And again, I'm using an HP 10,000 here, but it goes for any device, any offset or digital device. And a couple of years ago, I came up with some what I call split images. And the split images are the ISO images that we've been using on Grackle test forms forever. I've got all of them split into 4 sections. And when you put these images on test forms, you can show with your eyes that the sides of the images that are optimized, meaning have been run through ColorHub to decrease the volatility of the build, provide faster make-readies, much more consistent to proof, and it actually visually verifies whether or not your output device is really printing the way you're expecting. And it can work on a proof as well. And as I mentioned, I have all the ISO images this way, and if you have a file you'd like to see this done with, I'm pretty good at Photoshop. I could do a stripe, so half would be optimized and half would not, or I could just take your file, optimize it, and give it back to you. I just did this for a customer who'd been looking at ColorHub for quite a while, which seems to be the case, and then they had this jewelry catalog page that they just were having a hard time printing on their press. He sent it to me. Within 10 minutes, I sent it back to him, and I sent it back to him optimized 2 different ways. One way was absolute full optimization, as aggressive as I could get, and the other way was what I call more of a starter condition. Still a fair amount of optimization, but not maxed out. The first one saved about 19% ink. The second one saved more like 39% ink. He put them both on his proofer, and he said, "Dave, I can't see the difference. What's the difference?" And I said, "Open the file up in Acrobat and look at the black only on the splits." And he's like, "Oh, wow, okay, I see the difference." Here, the first quadrant on the far left was the original file, and that's the amount of black in the original file. The second quadrant is the amount of black in the Alwan optimized file. And in this way, you can see that there's a lot more black and a lot less CMY. So now we're looking at just the CMY data, and there's a lot of CMY on the left quadrant. There's very little CMY in the middle quadrant. And if the output device is printing absolutely perfect, like your proofer, you won't see any lines at all. You will see no difference between the optimized and the non-optimized file. And that's why this guy who printed the 2 files, one optimized at full aggressive and the second one is more of a conservative level, he couldn't see a difference because his proofer was set to Grackle. And the Alwan product, the way the math works is that it will not change the color. The first thing it looks at is how much it looks at what the color of the original is, it looks at the color of the process file, and the #1 rule is don't change the color. So I had another customer who's looking at this right now, and they were doing a large format, and he used 4 different optimization settings, printed all 4 of them, and he said, "Dave, I can't tell the difference. This isn't working." And I said, no, it is working. Look at the digital file. You'll see that the more aggressive one has a lot less CMY, a lot more black, but you're not going to see the difference on the output device as long as that output device is printing to the condition that you told ColorHub to separate it for. So if you set ColorHub to Grackle and you're printing to Grackle, you will not see a difference no matter how many levels of aggressiveness you apply to this file. And this really results in increased printability because the file is a lot less volatile. You can take that file, output it on digital, on large format, on conventional, and they'll match much, much better. I had one customer who did a whole thing, whole print project for Kawasaki with yellow ATVs and gray granite rocks, and they had to print on different types of styrene and paper and cardstock on large format, on a digital press, on a conventional press. That job went through their shop prior to them getting Alwan ColorHub, and it was a nightmare for them. They struggled with it. They worked their butts off. They They were able to do it, but it took them a lot of extra time and cost them a lot of money. They got ColorHub. Job came back up. They reprocessed the job. I can give you the press operator's name or the press supervisor's name. He let it go through the shop, and then he went back to his guys and he said, guys, do you realize how easy that job went this year? And they all sat back and they were like, oh yeah, this was a job that was a nightmare last year. And he said, it wasn't a nightmare this year because of ColorHub, because it takes that volatility out of the file for sheet fed. You get faster make ready, faster finishing, much higher quality product because it's much easier to match the proof. You get much more stability through the print run. For web presses or digital presses, you're less ink, you're faster drying, again, faster finishing in that you can finish the job quicker. Paper Direct, one of my customers, a couple years ago I went in there and they printed a job Monday morning. And we set ColorHub in their workflow Tuesday midday, let's say. Wednesday morning, they had to do some more printing on the job that they had done Monday. They printed it Wednesday morning, and they measured the wetness of the ink from their offset press. The job they printed Wednesday morning through ColorHub was drier than the job they printed Monday morning before I got on site, which meant they started finishing that job that printed Wednesday on Wednesday. They didn't have to wait 2 days for finishing. They were just going crazy over what a benefit this was. And of course, with true Adobe transparency handling, you don't have the issues with digital and large format devices. So I've said the product name. It's all in ColorHub. It can take files from any color space to any color space. So it can go spot to hi-fi, it can go spot to process, it can go RGB to hi-fi, it can go CMYK to CMYK. It really can do any color space to any color space, all based on the Adobe library, and it plugs into any workflow. ColorHub itself is not a workflow. It's designed to work in sync with any workflow. So I didn't even list all the workflows that we have it working with. These are just some of the big ones that I come across, so I threw them up here. And we have, I want to say it's a 96% satisfaction ratio with the software. We provide a 90-day guaranteed payment plan, meaning we can put this program on a payment plan, and at the 90-day mark, if you don't see that you're saving more money every month by using ColorHub than not, we will refund all your money. Everything. And in fact, the first 30 days is free, just to make it so easy for you that there's no reason why you shouldn't look at it. I get told all the time, oh, we don't have it in the budget. That's what I was told by the company that gave me the jewelry sample. And I kept telling the decision makers there, you don't need budget. This is going to save you money as you go. And after they saw the file go through, they saw the results, I know that they see that, yeah, this is really true. We've been offering this program for, I think we're coming up on 3 years now. And in 3 years, I've had one company return it. And that one company, I would say that the reason it was returned was because of operators not really understanding everything that was going on. Because I've got hundreds of companies that have tried this and have absolutely loved the results. We actually have a video that we can share a link to of 5 users that are all within 10 minutes of my house. I recorded it about a year ago, and every one of them says they paid for it within 90 days. Some of them say 60 days. And they're all real users that I can put you in touch with. Now you might be asking, how's it fit in the workflow? Yeah, kind of busy workflow diagram here. I apologize, but the files are coming in from the customer on the left, and then you've got ColorHub taking those files and optimizing them and normalizing them into a device-independent PDF file. This PDF file can be used for tablet viewing. This file can be used for print. It can normalize to any color space that you want it to, which is really a unique capability, which is why I bring up tablets. But how most people use it today is for print. And you can have multiple cues to optimize the file for your large format device. We have a sister product to ColorHub, which is available at the time of getting ColorHub, called Link Profiler. So Link Profiler builds a device link that, in this case, I'm showing with an HP Indigo, which is my favorite way to implement ColorHub with an Indigo. We have ColorHub up front doing the normalization, and then we do the specific Indigo conversion through the device link that's loaded on the HP DFE. Then we have a couple other cues for our other devices, and you're not limited by the number of cues. Sandy Alexander, if any of you were at the Color Conference last year, their president gave a keynote message about color management. And he said color management has been their backbone for their organization, and ColorHub is their color management system. They have 250 cues running ColorHub for every type of printing they do, which includes web offset, sheet fed offset, digital presses, and large format presses. And every file that goes to any of their output devices goes through ColorHub at least one time, if not more. During Hurricane Sandy, I got an email of a picture with the Alwan ColorHub computer being run on a generator, and the tagline was something along the lines of, "Look, we cannot live without this program, even in the middle of a hurricane." So it's a very versatile tool that can work in any workflow. Now, the number one complaint that we always got about ColorHub was that we optimized the file, but it doesn't look right, so we don't think ColorHub optimized it correctly. But as I explained, ColorHub does a very sophisticated color analysis on the file before it releases the file. So it won't look different from the original unless the output device is not printing the same as what you told ColorHub to optimize it for. Meaning, you might be telling ColorHub to optimize it to Grackle, but your output device isn't really printing Grackle. And this leads us to our third main problem, and the reason that Alwan came out with Print Standardizer. Print Standardizer helps the operator assess immediately upon output if the output device is really matching the reference print condition that it's supposed to match. So in my example, let's say the output device is supposed to match Grackle, but it's not. Well, what do you do about it? There's many reasons why that output device might not be matching Grackle. Print Standardizer will tell you. And it'll tell you why it's not matching, meaning maybe your ink's contaminated. I've had multiple situations where running on an offset press, and the cyan ink density is the right ink density, but it was being cross-contaminated with the magenta unit because one person wasn't cleaning it up right, so it was intermittent. They really didn't notice it until they got Print Standardizer, and Print Standardizer alerted the operator that, you know, it's the right density, but it's the wrong color. And that's why the skies were going purple, was because the cyan was contaminated with the magenta and everything was going purple. Print Standardizer let them know that right away. In fact, this customer told me that they learned more about their press in the first 30 days of using Print Standardizer than they did the previous 3 years of running the press without it. So it keys in to what's happening on the output device. And back to our workflow diagram, you can see that ColorHub optimizes and normalizes the files up front. Print Standardizer ensures that the output device is actually printing the way it's supposed to be printing, not only process colors, but also spot colors and spot color builds. And it reports back immediately telling you, yes, it does pass, or no, it doesn't. So in a way, it closes the loop. And back to the input, to ensure that the way the file is separated is the way the file is actually printing. So, Print Standardizer provides immediate conformance for the operator in terms of whether or not that device passes, whether it's G7 or 12647-2, 3, 4, what have you. And if it's not, you can actually iterate the tone curve for a digital press or the plate curve for a traditional press to bring that press back into line. Now, you don't want to use this as a band-aid to bring the device into line every day for a conventional press, because that's where process control comes in, and you want to make sure that your process is stable. But we've worked all this out. In fact, I've got standard operating procedures that help the operator and the owner and the manager of the department ensure that everyone's doing their due diligence before you iterate a plate curve. Because if a press operator knew you could iterate a plate curve for every job, they'd have you iterate a plate curve for every job. So we've got to draw the line somewhere for the process control. Now, a digital press, because digital presses are known to drift, especially if they're not in a climate-controlled environment, you might want to iterate a plate curve or a tone curve for a digital press every day or every important job that you run. And that's why you see in this sample here, there's both a manual dot gain curve generation or an automatic dot gain curve generation. So Print Standardizer helps you make the operator accountable. The operator will know right away if the job's right or wrong. And for presses, it shows them if their solids are right and if their dot gains are right. If the solids and dot gains are right, then you know what? The gray balance is going to be right. So when you do your G7 curves, we document what dot gains are required at that time to get the right gray balance. And then as long as the operator maintains their solids and their dot gains at those values, it'll always match. So on the reports that Print Standardizer gives you, it'll give you the solids, whether it's cyan, magenta, yellow, black, solid, cyan, magenta, yellow, black, orange, green, violet, with their associated dot gains. What I train the operators to say is, Mr. Press Operator, don't come back to see me in pre-press unless all the solids are in the right circles and all the dot gains are in the right dotted lines. If everything's in the right dotted lines and you're not matching color, come back and see me. If they're not, then get it in line, and when it's not, then come see me. So we actually have a full training course on this online, which I'll talk about in a minute. But it's really important to help operators transition from looking at density to looking at color. Because yes, you can control the press with density, but customers buy color. And we need to eliminate the finger pointing. This is an actual setup. I was just at this account a couple weeks ago, where we're setting up their press for hi-fi color printing. And you see at the top of the press console here is a scanning exact. And this is a 56-inch press sheet. And you'll see the exact sitting on an aluminum bar that's attached to the table. And the aperture of the exact is over the color bar. So we built a color bar, a 7-color color bar for this press sheet. And the operator scans the color bar with the exact, and it immediately comes up with whether or not the ink is the right color and what the ink zone data is. So how level are the keys? So here's a zoom in on the screenshot that you can see if I back up. If you look at the screen sitting up there at the top left, this is what it'll look like, and it'll show the operator what they need to do with their ink keys to level it out. You can see in this scenario, the cyan is too unequal. He has to level it out more, but the delta E of the cyan's 0.9. As he was coming up to make ready, it'll give him an arrow of an up or down arrow telling him if he needs to bring everything up or down. If they can't understand what the bars are telling them over on the right, but the bars are lining up with the ink keys. Now, this is a key story. We were in this shop initially trying to do a hi-fi color press run for G7 plate curves and the tone value curves for the hi-fi colors. And they were using a handheld device doing point and click on the color bar off the top of the page. Are you kidding me? This is a 56-inch page doing a handheld point and click for 7 colors across 40 ink key zones. It took 4 hours to get anything that was even usable. And I was asking them, guys, how long is your normal make ready? And they were telling me, well, a couple hours. And I'm like, oh my goodness. I was in my head, I was just going, wow, this is just crazy. Because setting them up with a scanning exact, and now in full disclosure here, the scanning exact is rated for a 44-inch press sheet. X-Rite's not going to like me much by me saying this, but 44 is too large for an operator to do. So what we did with this press bar was we did 2 28-inch sections. So 28 inches for the left side, 28 inches for the right side. So for the operator to scan this color bar, it's actually 2 scans, one for the left, one for the right. So they level off the right side, level off the left side, and then it'll be level to itself. But the make ready improvement by using an exact just in this manual mode of hand scanning the color bar, which is about for 28 inches, it's about we'll say a 15-second process. So you scan that color bar. It gives you real-time feedback on whether or not you're going too fast or too slow. The data feeds into the Alwan Print Standardizer, shows you the ink key information, shows you whether or not your solids are at the right color. It can record dot gain and G7 information if you put it in your color bar. And immediately the operator knows what to do. Instead of hand clicking on multiple solids just for cyan and keeping straight in his head what he needs to do with the cyan, make that move, and then do the same for the other colors, it's like taking them from the 18th century to the 21st century. It's really unbelievable. Anyone doing traditional press printing with a handheld instrument, you need to look at something like this. This solution is less than $10,000, and the exact itself is up around $6,000. So it's a very cost economical solution, and you can disconnect just by hitting one button. You can disconnect the exact from scanning mode and do spot readings anywhere on the sheet, and then go back and say reconnect and do the strip again. So from a productivity standpoint, it's out of this world. You can pay for that, and I would guess most of you, if you're still using handheld clicks on a press, you'll see an ROI on that in weeks, not months, weeks. So that will ensure that your press is printing to standards better. In this case, I referenced the standard as the stake in the ground. We'll call that Grackle if you're printing on a #1 paper stock. And if you've got large format devices, the large format device is like a ring that goes around that stake. So you aim your large format device to Grackle, take your digital press, you aim that for Grackle, take your proofers, you aim that for Grackle, and your press, you aim that to Grackle, and now each of your devices are matching one another. And oh, by the way, they're matching your reference condition as well, whether it's Grackle, swap, or some other condition based on your substrate. Print Standardizer can do this. And I like to say it's relatively easy to get your devices around the stake, meaning I've been doing G7 press runs for 10 years now, getting a press into G7 condition. Printers, you don't need to waste your money doing dedicated print runs to get your press into a G7 condition. More and more, the cost of a dedicated print run can be very expensive, where using Print Standardizer and an intelligent color bar, you can actually update the plate curves based on your color bar information. As long as your color bar is representative of what's going on the press sheet, just by measuring in the color bar, or if for whatever reason the system you're using can't have what I'll call an intelligent color bar, we have supplemental color bars that can run in line with your existing color bar. Use your I1, your Exact, your SpectraDens, what have you. Scan these color bars or these control strips, and it will iterate your existing plate curve and bring your device back into line, whether it's an indigo running off of a 05 LUT, or whether it's your Komori running off of some Harmony plate curve that was put in there 2 years ago. Print Standardizer can iterate these curves and bring that device back into line and update the curve as you move along. So that can save you thousands of dollars in money in terms of eliminating a dedicated print run to give you a accurate result, and probably just as importantly, it provides direct feedback for the operator in terms of whether or not that press is printing grackle without even having to look at a proof. Now, we are offering you guys a control strip that you can image on however many devices you want to image. I'm opening myself up here. And as many substrates. You image this control bar on different substrates and different devices, and we actually have an instruction set in terms of the type of device that you're looking at. So we have a certain file for digital devices. We have a different file for conventional devices to optimize the real estate, so you don't have to have a whole lot of extra room for these control bars. Print them along with your normal production work, and if you have measurement devices, I can give you the how-to and a trial version of Print Verifier so you can measure this at your location and see the results, or I'll let you send them to my address, and our group here will measure them for you and provide a report showing not only the precision of your output device, which has to do with the variation, not only intra-page, but inter-job and inter-job variation. But we'll also tell you how accurate your device is, meaning how well it's hitting your targeted aim point. Print Standardizer is very customizable, very powerful. It supports virtually any measurement device, supports any color bar, and it can assess to any print condition, including spot colors and hi-fi colors. And one of the things I like most about it is you can customize the tolerances. So you can start with a hula hoop. That company I was showing earlier, I started with a hula hoop so that as the press operator is doing the scans, it's easy for them to pass. So as they're using this new tool in this new environment, which can be pretty overwhelming for a press operator, I want to make it appear as easy as possible for them. So my tolerances are real wide. You get within 5 delta E of the color, I'm giving you a pass, right? And then over time, if the company wants to be, let's say, G7 target qualified, then we need to lower that delta E to 3.5 for the CMYs. We can tighten that as the operator's now been using the system for, let's say, a couple weeks or a couple months, depending upon how quick they pick up on it. And as we tighten it, it becomes a little more challenging for them, but they don't have this negative view that this is going to be a whole lot more work for them. So we've learned, installing hundreds of these systems, how to deal with the psychology of the operators and get the buy-in at the operator level. And in this way, it helps make the operator accountable. And for digital press operators, I've actually got a training program online which walks the operator through a maximum of 2 prints and 2 measurements using Alwan Print Verifier, and it will pinpoint where the problem is. Is the problem in the physical file that they were given? Is the problem in the mechanics or the calibration of the output device? Or is the problem in the color conversion of the output device, because it can only be one of those 3 places. This free online training course tells them that and allows them now to take control of what's happening on their digital output device instead of just scratching their head saying, yeah, it didn't look right, but I printed 2,000 anyway, which will cost you a lot of money. So in summary, a lot of printers have these issues but don't even know it. And these issues are costing a lot of money. But with our test files and our analysis, you can find those problems and know the solution to fix the problem. No cost, and we promise you'll learn more than you would ever expect. This will improve your productivity, your customer satisfaction, and you'll be tying in your digital presses with your large format presses, with your conventional presses, getting to that standard stake in the ground so that there's no difference between these technologies. So let's get started. My email is david@pilotmarketing.com, and I believe you can expect some feedback from Jim in terms of how to get some of these files. So I appreciate your effort and your time listening to us today. Do we have time for Q&A, Jim?
Yeah, we've got a few minutes, Dave. Thank you very much. Fantastic presentation. I was actually getting comments through emails, people wanting to get recordings of this to share with other people in their own organization. So great job, great job. I've got a couple of questions here. Here's a question with regard to ID Alliances. Does ID Alliance accept the Alwan control strip live job sheets for yearly certification runs now?
Yes. In fact, we set RIT up, who does all of ID Alliance's qualifications. We set them up with Print Verifier and an I1. And we have a target that is essentially rows 4 and 5 of the P2P target, so that if you put that on your traditional press run or your digital press run, really doesn't matter which, and you can measure that. If those rows 4 and 5 of the P2P pass G7 conformance, it will qualify as your requalification for G7 for that year.